All right, we're gonna go ahead and pull the clutch cover off on this Honda Fourtrax 300. We loosened up all the 8mm bolts around the outside. We're just gonna take those off while you're watching, that way you can see where all of them are. Just basically around the outside. Now, on this model, you do not have to take the oil filter cover off. There's no bolts underneath of there. I'd suggest replacing your oil filter when you're doing any kind of motor work at all. So 3 8mm bolts that we pulled off there. We already pulled the oil filter off of there, but I just wanted to show you there's no bolts down inside of this cover. Like I said, some models there are, and you don't need to pull that cover to get that clutch cover off. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pull these sensors off since we're here. It's a 14mm to get these off. Two sensors. And it actually takes a deep. A deep 14, but mine's an impact. There you go. Got both those off, and then that wire harness we pulled off in the previous video will go with these two sensors, as well as this larger sensor that we're going to try to get to now. And there's your larger sensor there. So make sure we've got all three there, and that goes with the wire harness that we pulled off earlier. So check that video if you're needing to look at that. This is the cover that was on top of that to kind of protect those wires. Now we're going to pull this clutch cover off here. What I can do, you can take a rubber hammer, kind of tap on it, and then I pull up at the same time. Now this has got a seal that goes around the outside, and a lot of times what happens is that seal kind of holds it into place. So what I do a lot of times, I'll take a little bit of pressure, pull up on it, just tap on it there. That just the jarring of that steel hammer works a whole lot easier. We're going to pull this out. I think that Kickstarter gear pulled up with it, but clutch cover is now off. Now I was showing you when we adjusted that clutch there, what that was doing is putting pressure on this and adjusting this. So that's what we were doing when we were adjusting your clutch, which was the 14mm and the flat screwdriver on that side. Now the other thing, the other thing that I told you I was going to show you is your shift shaft went all the way through. It went and hooked up to this, and when you're putting this back together, you see there's a dot there on this shaft. There's also an arrow down here that you probably can't see very well, but on your crankcase, you want to make sure that those are lined up, and that's going to put this gear in the correct position. Also, you're going to want to move that to wherever it needs to go to line that up. And then that adjuster that I was showing you will fit right in there, going back together. Now, we've got your centrifugal clutch here, your inner, your outer, and then we've got your clutch basket here with your Kickstarter assembly here. Now this is spring loaded, and you can saw that it came up when we were pulling this clutch cover off. You want to make sure that you get that in the right place going back together. This spring will hook on the top of your case there, and then what happens is when you kick that gear, when you get to it, when it slides back, it'll engage into there. So got your spring there, and then it'll fit down in there, and then you got to turn it to line it up. So I'll show you that when we put everything back together. So that's your Kickstarter gear there. We got an 1 1/16 nut here to pull the centrifugal clutch off. And I like to take a finger and a lot of times a rag and kind of just hold this clutch. All right, this is reverse threaded, so you want to make sure that you're turning this clockwise to remove it. So clockwise will remove it. And then your cam chain, if you're spinning this clutch over, your cam chain will hit, so you want to make sure you lift that up if you turn it over. Now these clutches can be a bit of a bear. They make a clutch puller, but you don't actually have to have that. It just takes a little bit of time. You can take a hammer and tap on the back of this clutch. You don't want to hit it a whole bunch just to damage that, but sometimes it just takes the right movement to get that off of there. I like to take and put pressure on this side as well when we're doing that, so that you're not just tapping on one side and you can take and spin it. There we go. And they come off there, and they both come off there, the inner and the outer at the same time. So you've got a one-way gear in behind here. This will be removed. Putting this back together, you want to make sure that the outside is, just like it says, facing the outside. So that's your centrifugal clutch going back together. Now you've got the gear that sits in behind your centrifugal clutch there. And that gear we won't be able to pull off until we pull the oil pump off, as well as the clutch basket. So we'll just leave that for the time being. And we'll pull your oil pump. And that's a 10 millimeter to get this cover off here. And then to get your oil pump off, you got to remove this oil line. And one of the lines is in behind this clutch basket, so we're going to remove that. Here's your guide and your chain. You can see a little bit better there, but we'll get all the way down to it. I do this in a cross pattern. They are spring loaded, and I've seen it before where there's been too much tension on just one side. If you just go all the way up with all three of them and your last one's the only one holding, and I've seen it break that clutch basket before. So you want to make sure you go in a cross pattern removing those. Just set these aside here. Now what we're going to do is pull this larger nut here. Again, it's that 1/16", and I hold it again. This is just regular threads, so just counterclockwise to remove this. You got a special washer here. You want to make sure that goes back on, and it says outside on it. I don't know why. Well, one side's rounded, I guess, a little bit more. So now what we can do, I like to make sure that'll come up. Now I put these springs back in here, and this will hold everything together until we go back together. So that way plates aren't getting spread out and parts aren't getting lost. So again, tighten it back up, crisscross pattern. And those need to be torqued, and a lot of times you like to replace those springs, especially if you're needing to do clutch work at all. So there's your clutch basket there, and what you can do now, which is nice, is you can pull this all out together and inspect that clutch basket really good, make sure everything's where it needs to be there. All right, got a lot of 10 millimeter